The Zathrian fleet has arrived at the Sol faster than light.
300
Travel at the
warships
edge
stand
of the
ready.
Sol system.
The primitive
the
planet
confidence
will
of
bow
conquerors
before the
who had never
Zathrian
known
Empire.
defeat. 300 warships,
the third
each the
planet from a
size of
yellow
a small
star,
city,
home to a
hauling the
species that had
darkness of
barely
space
managed to
like
colonize
predators
its own
sizing
moon
up prey.
and establish a few
Admiral
struggling outposts on the
Krelvis
neighboring red
stood on the
planet.
bridge of the
The
flagship
Zathrian
Dominion's
Empire
fist,
had subjugated
his four
47
eyes scanning
worlds.
the primitive
Each time, the
planet. It
pattern
would soon
remained the
bow
same.
before the
Arrival,
Zathrian
simple,
Empire.
efficient,
The
profitable.
third planet from a
Opening
yellow
channel
star,
to human homeworld,
home
Lord
to a
Krelvis.
species that had barely managed to
I will address
colonize
them
its
from the
own
throne.
moon and establish a few struggling outposts on the neighboring red planet.
Secretary
According
General,
to the
I am the
scout
commander
ships,
of this sector.
these humans had only
Commander, we are
achieved
open to
nuclear
dialogue.
capability
Dialogue is
a
secondary.
century
No
ago.
compliance is
They
required.
possessed
We
no
will not
energy
be
shields,
intimidated.
no
I
plasma
am
weapons,
Admiral Krelvis
and their
of the
ships
Zathrian
couldn't even
Imperial.
break the light barrier.
You have two
This would
of
be
your
the
port
easiest
admiral
conquest in
fighters.
Zathrian history.
Your world's in no fraction into
Krelvis
major
clicked his
popularities.
mandibles together in
Admiral
satisfaction.
Krelvis, Earth welcomes
The
peaceful
Zathrian
contact with
Empire had
extraterrestrial
subjugated
civilizations
47
hostility.
worlds
However, we
across the
cannot hold
galaxy.
diplomatic negotiations
Each
to
time,
establish mutual
the
understanding and
pattern
cooperation.
remained the same.
Krelvis mandibles
Arrival.
clacked in what passed for
Demonstration of
Zathral.
superior force.
You misunderstand your
Surrender.
position, human. This is
Integration
never a good thing.
into the
You're
Empire
this
as
to
worker
scratch our
colonies.
hull plating.
Simple,
Then I'm afraid
efficient,
we choose the third option.
profitable.
We fight.
Communications Officer Trelawnec, open a channel
Fight,
to the
can't
human
play
homeworld,
cases,
Krelvis
yes.
ordered.
Let them come. We are
Settling
ready.
his massive
Tactical
frame
Officer
into the
Venkar,
command
select the
throne.
5 largest
Within
human
moments,
cities. Prepare orbital
human face
bombardment. We shall
appeared
give
on
these
the view
primitives a
screen.
taste of our power.
creature
Minimal
looked
yield
soft,
only. Just
with
enough to
only
prove the
2
futility
eyes
of resistance.
and no protective
Within hours of the
carapace.
initial strikes, the
Its
electromagnetic
skin was a pale
spectrum around
pink
Earth
color,
erupted with
and it
activity.
wore some kind of
Satellites and
primitive
scans had
fabric
dismissed
covering.
as civilian
The
communication
human's
devices
title
suddenly
appeared
revealed
in the
hidden
translation
capabilities.
matrix. Secretary General of the United Earth Government. I am Admiral Krelvis of the Zathrian Imperial Fleet, he began. His words translated into the human's crude language. Your world has been selected for incorporation into the Zathrian Empire. You have 2 of your planetary rotations to surrender all military forces and governmental authority. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your major population centers. Compliance will be rewarded with minimal casualties and work assignments suitable to your species' limited capabilities. The human's face remained calm, almost unnaturally so. Admiral Krelvis, Earth welcomes peaceful contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. However, we cannot and will not surrender our sovereignty. We propose diplomatic negotiations to establish mutual understanding and cooperation. Krelvis's mandibles clacked in what passed for Zathrian laughter. You misunderstand your position, human. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability. You possess no weapons that can harm our vessels. Your largest explosive devices would barely scratch our hull plating. Your choice is simple. Surrender now and live as workers, or resist and die as fools. Then I'm afraid we choose the third option, the human said quietly. We fight. A transmission ended. Krelvis stared at the blank screen for a moment, then erupted into genuine laughter. His officers joined in, the bridge filling with the clicking, rattling sound of Zathrian amusement. Tactical Officer Venkar, select the 5 largest human cities. Prepare orbital bombardment. We shall give these primitives a taste of our power. Minimal yield only. Just enough to prove the futility of resistance. The targeting systems locked onto New York. Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, and Sao Paulo. Each would receive a single plasma bolt, calibrated to destroy a few city blocks and create impressive devastation without rendering the slave population unworkable. Weapons armed. Admiral, fire. 5 lances of superheated plasma streaked down through Earth's atmosphere, leaving burning trails across the sky. The humans had perhaps 30 seconds of warning before impact, but the plasma bolts never reached their targets. Brilliant points of light flared in the upper atmosphere as the weapons detonated prematurely. Their energy dispersed across hundreds of kilometers. Krelvis's eyes widened in surprise. Report! What happened? Venkar's claws clicked rapidly across his console. Admiral, the humans deployed some form of high-altitude interceptors. Our sensors detected multiple launches from ground and sea positions. The interceptors appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles, but they carried primitive nuclear warheads. They deliberately detonated their own atomic weapons in their atmosphere to create destruction fields that destabilized our plasma bolts. They irradiated their own sky to stop our attack. Krelvis felt a strange sensation he hadn't experienced in decades of military service. Uncertainty. Analysis suggests the radiation will disperse within days, Admiral. Minimal long-term environmental impact, but effective as a desperate defensive measure. Another officer spoke up. Admiral, we're detecting massive electromagnetic emissions from the planet's surface. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through. The same human face appeared, but this time the creature's expression had changed. Its lips were pulled back, exposing small white teeth. Its eyes held something that Krelvis' his translator database identified as defiance. Admiral Krelvis, you've made a critical error in your assessment of humanity. You see us as primitive because we lack your technology. But warfare isn't just about superior weapons. It's about will. It's about adaptation. It's about making your enemy pay such a terrible price that victory becomes meaningless. We've been fighting each other for our entire history. We know 10,000 ways to kill. And now you've given us a reason to use every single one of them. Not against each other, but against you. The transmission ended again. Krelvis felt his confidence waver for the first time. No conquered species had ever spoken to him like that. They begged. They pleaded. They negotiated for better terms. They didn't threaten. Venkar, what military assets do the humans actually possess? His tactical officer pulled up the data. Approximately 7,000 nuclear warheads of varying yields, Admiral. Multiple space agencies with chemical rockets capable of reaching orbit. Extensive satellite networks. Conventional military forces totaling perhaps 80 million individuals across their various nation-states, armed with projectile weapons, explosive devices, and primitive combat vehicles. Against our shields and armor, their conventional weapons are essentially useless. And yet they choose to fight. Fascinating. Krelvis made a decision. We'll teach them the price of defiance. Launch landing forces. 5 continents, 10 sites each. 50 beachheads. Once our warriors control their major cities and resources, their resistance will crumble. We'll keep the slave population intact, but we'll make them watch their world burn first. The Zathrian troop carriers descended through the atmosphere, each holding 5,000 warriors in powered combat armor. The humans scrambled their primitive aircraft to intercept, losing hundreds of planes to the carriers' point defense systems. But the humans kept coming, kept attacking, even when it was obvious their weapons couldn't penetrate Zathrian shields. The first carrier landed outside London. Its massive doors opened, and Zathrian shock troops poured out, their plasma rifles charged and ready. The humans had evacuated the city, but they'd left something behind. The entire area erupted in a chain of explosions that registered on seismographs across the planet. The humans had turned their own city into a massive bomb. Fuel depots, gas lines, chemical plants, and buried explosives all detonated in a carefully orchestrated sequence. The carrier, designed to withstand orbital bombardment, cracked open like an egg. 4,000 Zathrian warriors died in the first 30 seconds. Similar scenarios played out across the planet. In Beijing, the humans flooded underground tunnels with flammable gas and turned the subterranean network into a crematorium. In Mumbai, they'd rigged the entire water supply with chemical weapons that vaporized into toxic clouds when the Zathrian thermal weapons heated the pipes. In Lagos, they'd evacuated the population and left behind nothing but automated defenses and buildings, rigged to collapse in specific patterns, creating kill zones that funneled Zathrian troops into pre-sighted artillery positions By the end of the first day, 30 of the 50 landing sites had been completely destroyed or rendered combat ineffective. 70,000 Zathrian warriors were dead or missing. The humans had lost their own cities, sacrificed their infrastructure, and irradiated portions of their planet. But they'd proven something that made Krelva's blood run cold. They were willing to destroy themselves to hurt their enemies. At night, as Admiral Krelvis reviewed the casualty reports, he received another transmission from Earth. This time, it wasn't the Secretary General. It was a human military officer wearing a camouflage uniform and standing in what appeared to be an underground bunker. Admiral, I'm General Sarah Martinez, Commander of the Earth Defense Force. I want you to understand something about humans. We've fought 2 global wars. We've developed weapons capable of ending all life on our planet. We've survived plagues, famines, ice ages, and our own stupidity. We're not advanced like you. We're not elegant. We're not efficient. But we're survivors. And survivors don't fight fair. They fight to win. You want our planet? Come and take it. But I promise you, every meter of ground will cost you blood. Every city will be a tomb. Every ocean will be a grave. We'll fight you in the forests and the mountains. We'll fight you in the ruins of our cities. We'll fight you in the depths of space and the darkness of our oceans. We'll never stop. We'll never surrender. And when your empire realizes that conquering Earth W. 3 weeks into the invasion, Admiral Krelvis stood before the Zathrian War Council via quantum communication link, his posture rigid with frustration. The holographic projections of the 5 council members regarded him with expressions, ranging from disappointment to barely concealed anger. Explain to us, Admiral, how a primitive species with no energy weapons, no shields, and no faster-than-light capability has managed to destroy 40% of your ground forces. Council Leader Tharquin demanded, his elderly mandibles clicking with irritation. Krelvis pulled up the tactical displays. Honored Council, the humans do not fight as we anticipated. They do not hold territory. They do not mass their forces for conventional battle. Instead, they employ what their historical records call guerrilla warfare. They strike without warning, inflict maximum casualties, and vanish before we can respond effectively. Guerrilla warfare? Council Member Sylveth tilted her massive head. Explain this concept. The humans studied their own history extensively before our arrival. They examined every conflict where a technologically inferior force defeated a superior enemy. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the American Revolution, dozens of others. They learned that conventional warfare against a superior foe is suicide. So they don't fight conventionally. They've adapted their entire military doctrine to exploit our weaknesses. Krelvis highlighted a series of incidents on the tactical map. 1 week ago, we established a forward operating base outside the ruins of Moscow. Standard fortification protocols, shield generators, automated defenses, 3,000 warriors. The humans spent 6 days doing nothing. No attacks, no harassment. We assumed they'd abandoned the region. Then, on the 7th night, our sensors detected movement. A single human, walking toward our perimeter unarmed. And you fired upon this human? No. Our protocols require identification before engaging potentially non-hostile targets. The human claimed to be a civilian seeking food and shelter. While our guards processed the request, approximately 500 humans emerged from underground tunnels they'd spent 6 days digging. They were inside our perimeter before we realized the lone human was a distraction. They carried primitive explosives strapped to their bodies and detonated them simultaneously throughout the base. The entire facility was destroyed. We lost 2,800 warriors. The humans lost 500 volunteers who knew they wouldn't survive. They traded 1 for 6 and considered it a victory. But council members shifted uncomfortably. Such tactics were beyond their experience. This is not an isolated incident, Krelvis continued. The humans employ what they call asymmetric warfare. They know they cannot defeat us in open battle, so they refuse to give us open battle. They hide in their cities' ruins, in their forests, in underground networks we cannot map. They attack our supply lines, our communications arrays, our isolated units. Every convoy we send is ambushed. Every patrol that ventures too far from support disappears. And they've learned to use our own weapons against us. He pulled up footage from a battle near the ruins of Delhi. Zathrian warriors empowered, armor advanced through rubble-strewn streets. Plasma rifles ready. Suddenly, the street erupted. But it wasn't human explosives. It was captured Zathrian plasma charges, rigged with primitive timing devices and buried in locations where the warriors' own sensors couldn't detect them through all the urban debris. They steal our weapons from our dead. They reverse engineer our equipment. 3 days ago, we encountered humans wearing pieces of Zathrian armor welded onto their own crude protective gear. The armor doesn't fit them properly, but it gives them just enough protection to survive 1 or 2 plasma shots instead of dying instantly. They've turned our technological advantage into merely a slight edge. Council member Vexler leaned forward. What of their military command structure? Surely eliminating their leadership would cripple their resistance? That's precisely what we attempted, Honored Council. We identified the human called General Martinez and launched a precision strike on her command bunker. The attack succeeded. The bunker was destroyed. Martinez was killed. Krelvis paused. It changed nothing. Within hours, another human commander assumed control. We eliminated that one as well. And another took over. The humans don't rely on centralized command the way we do. They've organized into thousands of independent cells, each capable of operating autonomously. Destroying one leader merely activates another. It's like trying to kill a creature by cutting off one of its 1,000 tentacles. The war had evolved into a nightmare of attrition. The Zathrians controlled the skies and the seas, but the moment they landed ground forces anywhere, they entered a hostile environment where every human civilian might be a combatant, every building might be a trap, and every quiet moment might precede an ambush. Krelvis shared reports from across the planet. In the Amazon rainforest, an entire Zathrian battalion had been lured into the jungle and systematically picked apart over 3 weeks. The humans knew the terrain intimately. They moved through the dense vegetation like ghosts, setting traps, poisoning water sources, and sniping at Zathrian patrols with primitive projectile weapons fired from positions kilometers away. In the Siberian wilderness, humans used the extreme cold to their advantage. They disabled heated suits of captured Zathrian armor, just enough that warriors wearing them would survive, but become hypothermic, slowing their response times. Then they'd attack, using the environmental conditions as a weapon more effectively than any rifle. In the deserts of North Africa, resistance cells had learned to track Zathrian patrols by their thermal signatures and would collapse sand dunes onto them, burying warriors in hundreds of tons of sand. By the time rescue forces arrived, the humans had vanished into underground networks that predated the invasion by centuries. What of their population centers? Farquin asked. Have we not secured any major cities? We control the ruins of 17 cities, Krelvis admitted. But control is relative. The humans evacuated their civilians before we arrived and left behind only fighters. These fighters occupy the underground infrastructure, sewers, subway tunnels, and basement networks. We control the surface. They control everything beneath it. Every building we occupy becomes a target. They've learned to construct improvised explosives from materials we cannot detect with our sensors. common fertilizers, industrial chemicals, even biological compounds that register as harmless until they're mixed together and detonated. He showed footage from Tokyo, where Zathrian forces occupied what they thought was a secured district. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then, over the course of a single night, the humans detonated charges in the foundations of 70 buildings simultaneously. The entire district collapsed, burying 3,000 warriors under millions of tons of rubble. They booby-trapped their own dead, Kralvis said quietly. We learned that after recovering what appeared to be human casualties from a battlefield. When our medical teams attempted to examine the bodies for intelligence purposes, the corpses exploded. The humans had anticipated our protocols and used them against us. They filled their dead with explosives and left them for us to find. The council members fell silent. This kind of warfare was alien to them. The Zathrian way of war involved honorable combat, clear battle lines, and respect for the fallen. The humans had no such conventions. They fought with a brutality born of desperation and a creativity born of necessity. What of their manufacturing capability? Sylveth asked. Surely our orbital bombardment has crippled their ability to produce weapons? That's what our projections suggested, Kralvis replied. The reality is different. The humans dispersed their manufacturing before the invasion. They're producing weapons in thousands of small facilities underground, underwater, even in mobile factories they constantly relocate. They can't match our production rate, but they don't need to. They're not building warships or advanced technology. They're building simple, effective weapons that can be manufactured with basic tools and raw materials. Rifles, explosives, chemical weapons, biological agents. We've identified at least 40 different designs of improvised explosive devices, each tailored to specific tactical situations. He pulled up intelligence reports showing human workshops in abandoned mines, in underwater facilities built into coral reefs, in Arctic bunkers powered by geothermal energy. The humans had transformed their entire planet into a distributed war machine. They've also learned to think in timescales that we find difficult to counter, Kralvis continued. We plan operations in terms of days or weeks. They plan in terms of months or years. They'll spend half a year preparing a single ambush, studying our patrol patterns, identifying our vulnerabilities, and setting up the perfect killing ground. Then they'll strike once, inflict horrific casualties, and disappear. By the time we respond, they're already preparing the next attack somewhere else entirely. Council member Drekkenor, the military strategist, studied the tactical displays with professional interest. You're describing an enemy that has turned weakness into strength. They cannot match our firepower, so they refuse to engage in firefights. They cannot match our armor, so they attack from positions where armor is eerie. Commander Vexrol crouched in the rubble of what had once been downtown Los Angeles, his plasma rifle scanning for targets that refused to appear. 2 months into the invasion, and he was beginning to understand why Admiral Kralvis looked like he'd aged 10 years. This wasn't war as the Zathrians knew it. This was hunting shadows that fought back. His squad consisted of 12 warriors, down from the standard 24. The rest had been casualties of what the humans called improvised warfare. Vexral had stopped counting the different ways humans could kill. Buried explosives, sniper fire from kilometers away, poisoned water supplies, collapsing buildings, biological weapons grown in basement laboratories. The humans had turned creativity in killing into an art form. Movement. Sector 7, his second-in-command, Trellick, whispered through the comlink. Vexrail's sensors registered the thermal signature. One human moving slowly through the ruins about 200 meters ahead. Standard civilian heat pattern, no weapon signatures. But Vexral had learned that meant nothing. Humans concealed weapons in places Zathrian sensors couldn't detect. They used materials that registered as harmless until assembled into deadly devices. "Hold position," Vexral ordered. "Wait for support." The support never came. A series of explosions erupted 3 blocks away, where their backup squad had been stationed. Vexrol's tactical display showed 12 friendly signatures winking out in rapid succession. Gone. Dead. Eliminated by humans who'd been watching. Waiting, choosing the perfect moment to strike. The thermal signature ahead stopped moving. Then it raised what appeared to be a communications device. A human voice crackled through Vexral's translator, speaking on an open channel. "Commander Vexral, 3rd Battalion, 2nd Division. Serial identification, Theta 779. You're surrounded. You have approximately 90 seconds to live, unless you listen very carefully." Vexral's blood went cold. The human knew his name, his rank, his identification code. How? "My name is Captain James Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps. I'm going to teach you something about asymmetric warfare. You have superior technology. We have superior knowledge of terrain and tactics. Right now, there are 43 humans in positions around your squad. You can't see them because they're using a network of underground tunnels that your sensors can't penetrate through all this debris. Each human is carrying explosives, not sophisticated bombs. Simple devices made from fertilizer and diesel fuel. Very primitive. Very effective. Vexral signaled his squad to take defensive positions. His sensors showed nothing but the single human signature ahead. "You're bluffing," Vexral transmitted back. "Our sensors detect no additional hostiles. Your sensors detect thermal signatures and electromagnetic emissions," Rodriguez replied calmly. "We learned to defeat both in the first week. Thermal camouflage is just mud, vegetation, and patience. Electromagnetic silence is just turning off our radios and using hand signals. Sometimes the old ways work best." As if to prove his point, the ruins around Vexral suddenly bloomed with thermal signatures. 43 humans appeared on his sensors simultaneously, each one emerging from concealment with weapons trained on his squad. They'd been there all along, invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. "Now you see us," Rodriguez said. "Now you understand. We let you walk into this position. We watched you patrol this route for 2 weeks. We studied your tactics, your response times, your communication protocols. We know that your backup squad is dead, and your nearest reinforcements are 8 minutes away. We know that your shields can't stop slow-moving projectiles, like the arrows my people have aimed at you. We know that your armor has weak points at the joints, and we've had plenty of time to study exactly where to shoot." Vexral's mind raced through tactical options. They could fight. Zathrian warriors were formidable in close combat. But surrounded, outnumbered, and cut off from support, the outcome was inevitable. They would kill some humans, but they would all die. "What do you want?" Vexral asked. "I want you to take a message back to Admiral Krolvas," Rodriguez said. "Tell him this war is unwinnable. Not because you lack firepower, not because you lack courage, but because you're fighting an entire planet of people who would rather die than submit. Every human you kill creates a dozen more who want revenge. Every city you destroy becomes a symbol of resistance. Every victory you achieve costs you more than defeat would have. This is our world. We know every mountain, every forest, every street. You're invaders in a foreign land, and history has shown us that invaders always lose eventually. Always. Your history is not galactic history," Vexral countered, though his certainty was fading. "The Zathrian Empire has conquered 47 worlds. We have never failed." "Then we'll be your first failure," Rodriguez said simply. "Commander, I'm giving you and your squad safe passage back to your lines. Take your wounded. Take your dead. Tell your admiral what you saw here today. Tell him that we could have killed you all, but we chose to send a message instead. The message is this: Earth offers one final chance for negotiated withdrawal. Leave our planet, and we'll let you leave alive. Stay, and we'll bleed you until your empire abandons you here. The empire does not negotiate with primitives. Then the empire is going to learn a very expensive lesson. Rodriguez paused. You have 60 seconds to decide, Commander. Safe passage or a grave in Los Angeles. Your choice. Vexral looked at his squad. Young warriors, most of them. They'd volunteered for this campaign, expecting glory and easy conquest. Instead, they'd found a hell where the enemy was everywhere and nowhere, where every shadow might conceal death, where their superior technology meant less with each passing day. We accept your offer, Vexral said quietly. Smart choice. Lower your weapons and walk west on Wilshire Boulevard. Don't stop, don't look back, and don't deviate from the route. My people will be watching. Respect the truce, and you'll live. Vexral ordered his squad to comply. They walked through the ruins in silence, every nerve screaming at them to watch for ambush. But the humans kept their word. No shots were fired. No explosives detonated. They reached Zathrian lines 40 minutes later, alive but deeply shaken. Admiral Krelvas listened to Vexrol's report with an expression that might have been resignation. He'd heard similar stories from dozens of other commanders. The humans were winning not through superior force, but through psychological warfare. They were demonstrating that Zathrian lives were expendable, while human determination was infinite. They offered terms? Krelvas asked. Yes, Admiral. Negotiated withdrawal. They said Earth would allow us to leave peacefully if we departed immediately. Krelvas pulled up the casualty reports. In 2 months, the Zathrian invasion force had lost 94,000 warriors. Not to pitched battles or massive engagements, to ambushes, traps, and guerrilla attacks that chipped away at their numbers like water eroding stone. At this rate, the entire invasion force would be combat ineffective within 6 more months. And if we refuse their offer? Krelvas asked, though he already knew the answer. Then they'll continue doing what they've been doing, Admiral. Killing us, slowly, methodically, until we either leave or die. That evening, Krelvas received intelligence that changed everything. One of the deep-range scout ships reported unusual activity in the outer solar system. The humans had launched something. Analysis of the trajectory suggested it was heading toward the asteroid belt dot at first. Krelvas dismissed it as desperation. The humans were sending primitive rockets toward the asteroids, probably hoping to establish some kind of fallback position. But then the intelligence analysts completed their assessment, and Krelvas felt true fear for the first time since the invasion began. The humans weren't fleeing to the asteroids. They were mining them. And they weren't mining for resources. They were mining for weapons. The analysis was terrifying in its simplicity. Humans had spent decades developing the technology to redirect asteroids for mining operations. They understood orbital mechanics, gravitational assists, and trajectory calculations. And they'd apparently decided that if they couldn't build weapons sophisticated enough to threaten the Zathrian fleet, they'd use the oldest weapon in the universe, rocks. Big rocks. Moving very fast. The intelligence report estimated that within 6 months, the humans would be capable of altering the trajectories of asteroids and sending them toward the Zathrian fleet. The kinetic energy of a rock, several kilometers wide, accelerated to orbital velocities, would be equivalent to thousands of nuclear weapons. No shield could stop it. No defensive system could deflect it. It would simply smash through anything in its path. They're willing to bombard their own planet from space? Trellick asked in disbelief when Krelvas shared the intelligence. No, Krelvas corrected. They're willing to threaten to bombard their own planet to make us leave. It's a deterrent. A final warning. If we don't withdraw, they'll turn the entire solar system into a shooting gallery where any ship could be targeted by an asteroid at any moment. It was brilliant and horrifying. The humans couldn't match Zathrian technology, so they decided to use the solar system itself as a weapon. They'd turned their lack of advanced capabilities into an advantage by thinking in scales, T. The withdrawal took longer than planned. Not because the humans interfered, but because the Zathrians kept finding more bodies. Warriors who'd ventured too far from their units during the campaign, lured into traps or simply lost in the vast wilderness of Earth. The humans helped locate them, returning the dead with a formality that seemed strange given the brutality of the preceding months. Lieutenant Seckler supervised one such recovery operation in the mountains of Colorado. A patrol of 15 warriors had disappeared 3 weeks earlier during what should have been a routine reconnaissance mission. The humans had located their bodies and agreed to lead a Zathrian recovery team to the site. The human guide was a young woman named Sarah Chun, wearing worn military fatigues and carrying a primitive projectile rifle. She moved through the mountain terrain with an ease that made Seckler's powered armor seem clumsy by comparison. She didn't speak much during the climb, just pointed out safe paths and warned about unstable rocks. When they reached the site, Seckler understood why the patrol had been lost. It was a narrow valley, steep walls on both sides, only one way in and one way out. A perfect kill box. The 15 warriors had been caught in a crossfire, shot from elevated positions they never saw coming. Their bodies had been arranged respectfully, weapons placed beside them, armor cleaned of blood and mud. "We could have left them for the scavengers," Chon said quietly, the first words she'd spoken in an hour. "But that's not who we are." They were warriors doing their duty. They deserved better than to rot in the wilderness. Seckler studied the human woman. She couldn't have been more than 25 Earth years old, young even by human standards. Yet she moved and spoke with the confidence of a veteran. "You killed them?" Seckler asked. "My unit, yes." Chon looked at the bodies without expression. "They walked into our trap exactly as we predicted. We'd been tracking Zathrian patrol patterns for weeks. This valley was perfect. They had to cross it to reach the observation point they were heading toward. We set up firing positions on both ridgelines and waited. When they entered the valley, we opened fire. It was over in 90 seconds. And you feel no remorse?" Seckler asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. Chun looked at him directly. "You invaded our world. You tried to enslave our species. These warriors were part of that invasion. Do I take pleasure in killing? No. Do I regret doing what was necessary to defend my home? Also no. War isn't about feelings, Lieutenant. It's about survival. They chose to come here. They chose to fight. This is what happens when you fight humans on human ground." Seckler helped load the bodies onto transport sleds. "Your people are very different from other species we've encountered." "I know. Your Admiral's reports are all over human intelligence networks. We hacked your communication systems in the second week of the war. We've been reading your assessments, your casualty reports, your strategic discussions. It's been educational, seeing how you think about us." That revelation should have alarmed Seckler, but at this point, nothing about human capabilities surprised him anymore. "What did you learn from reading our reports?" "That you fundamentally misunderstood what you were facing," Chon replied, helping secure the last body. "You thought we were primitive because we lacked your technology. You thought we'd surrender because every other species did. You thought superior firepower equals victory. You were wrong on all 3 counts." She gestured toward the valley. "This is guerrilla warfare, Lieutenant. It's not about matching your strength. It's about avoiding your strength and attacking your weakness. You have better weapons? We don't engage in firefights. You have better armor? We attack from positions where armor doesn't matter. You have more warriors? We make you spread them thin across an entire planet, defending everything simultaneously while we attack one target at a time. You learned this from your history? Sekler asked. We learned it from surviving 10,000 years of killing each other, Chun corrected. Humans have been at war for our entire existence. We've developed every possible way to fight. Conventional armies, guerrilla insurgencies, siege warfare, naval combat, aerial bombardment, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. We've tried it all. We've refined it all. And we've learned that the side with the most advanced technology doesn't always win. The side that adapts faster, fights harder, and refuses to quit, that's the side that wins. She started walking back down the mountain, and Sekler followed. The other Zathrian recovery team members were already loading the transport with their fallen comrades. Can I ask you something? Chun said after a few minutes of silence. Yes. Why did you come here? I've read the strategic assessments. Earth isn't particularly resource-rich compared to asteroid belts or gas giants. Our technology isn't worth capturing because it's inferior to yours. Our population isn't especially skilled compared to other species you've conquered. So why invade? What did you hope to gain? Sekler considered the question. The Empire expands. It's what we do. It's who we are. We've been conquering worlds for 3 centuries. Each conquest brings resources, labor, territory. It's a cycle that feeds itself. We saw Earth as simply the next step in that cycle. Did it occur to anyone that maybe species don't want to be conquered? Chun asked. Of course. But want is irrelevant when faced with superior force. Or so we thought. Chun smiled grimly. You thought wrong. Humans have a saying. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. You gave us no option but violence. So we gave you violence in ways you never imagined. We turned our entire civilization into a resistance movement. Every human became a soldier. Every building became a fortress. Every piece of ground became a battlefield. That's what happens when you threaten our existence. We don't surrender. We adapt and overcome. They reached the base of the mountain, where Zathrian transport vehicles waited. Chun stopped and extended her hand in the human gesture of farewell. Sekler had learned enough about human customs to recognize it. Safe journey back to your fleet, Lieutenant, Chun said. And tell your people something for me. Tell them that humans remember. We remember who helped us and who hurt us. We remember acts of honor and acts of cruelty. Someday, when we have ships that can cross the stars, we'll venture out into the galaxy. When that day comes, the Zathrian Empire will have a choice. They can be our friends, and we'll be the most loyal allies they've ever known. Or they can be our enemies, and we'll be the most dangerous enemies they've ever faced. The choice is theirs. Sekler took the offered hand, feeling the fragility of human bones compared to his own armored grip. Yet this fragile creature had helped kill 15 Zathrian warriors in 90 seconds, had helped drive an empire to retreat, had helped teach the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. I will convey your message, Sekler promised. Back aboard the Dominion's Fist, Admiral Krelvis was finalizing the withdrawal. 300 warships had arrived 2 months ago. 243 remained, the others destroyed by human weapons that should have been ineffective. Conventional explosives, kinetic strikes, even chemical weapons that humans had banned themselves from using but happily deployed. Against alien invaders, the human orbital stations tracked the Zathrian fleet constantly, weapons locked on every ship. Primitive nuclear missiles that would be destroyed by point defense systems normally But the humans had developed tactics even for that. They'd launched dozens of missiles simultaneously, overwhelming defensive capabilities through sheer numbers. They'd learned that Zathrian shields, designed to stop sophisticated energy weapons, had trouble with crude nuclear explosions. Sometimes simple was effective. Krelvis stood on the bridge, watching Earth recede on the view screen. A beautiful world that had become a tomb for nearly 60,000 Zathrian warriors. More casualties than the Empire had suffered in the last century of conquests combined. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth," the communications officer reported. "It's marked as priority diplomatic communication. Put it through." The face that appeared was familiar. General Sarah Peterson, the current Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. She looked tired, older than she had at the start of the war, but her eyes held fierce satisfaction. "Admiral Krelvis, I wanted to speak with you before you left our system." "General Peterson, I'm surprised you'd wish to communicate. I wanted to make sure you understood what happened here," Peterson said. "This wasn't a victory because we were stronger. It was a victory because we were more committed. You could have won this war, Admiral. You had the firepower to sterilize our planet from orbit. You had the technology to build weapons we couldn't defend against. You had the numbers to overwhelm us through sheer attrition. But you didn't use those advantages because you wanted to conquer us, not destroy us. You wanted workers, not corpses. And that gave us the opening we needed. You're saying we lost because we showed restraint?" Krelvis asked. "No. You lost because you fundamentally misunderstood the nature of this conflict. You thought this was a conquest. We treated it as an existential war. You thought we'd surrender when the costs became too high. We were willing to pay any cost to remain free. You thought your technology made Vic." 5 years after the Zathrian withdrawal, the Galactic Council convened on the neutral station of Theta Prime to discuss the report that had been circulating through diplomatic channels. Representatives from 37 different species filled the Grand Chamber, their forms ranging from crystalline entities to gas-based, consciousness to creatures that resembled Earth's insects, scaled up to massive proportions. Ambassador Krelvis, formerly Admiral, stood before them. The failed Earth campaign had ended his military career, but the Council had recognized the value of his experience. He'd been appointed as special envoy to address the human question that now dominated galactic politics. "Honored representatives," Krelvis began, his voice carrying through the translation matrix, "I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a cautionary tale. 5 years ago, the Zathrian Empire attempted to incorporate a primitive species from a backwater system into our domain. We failed. Today, I will explain why that failure should concern every species in this chamber." The assembled representatives shifted in their various ways. Some had heard rumors about the Earth campaign. Others knew only that the Zathrians, who had never failed a conquest, had retreated from an undeveloped world. Krelvis activated the holographic display, showing Earth rotating slowly in 3-dimensional space. "This is Earth, third planet from a G-type star. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Single moon. Unremarkable in every measurable way. When we arrived, the dominant species, calling themselves humans, had achieved early space flight capability, but possessed no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. By every standard metric, they should have surrendered within days of first contact." He paused, letting the image shift to show the Zathrian fleet in orbit. "We deployed 300 warships. We demonstrated our superiority. We gave them terms. They refused. We assumed they were simply ignorant of the futility of resistance. We were wrong. They understood perfectly. They simply didn't care." The hologram shifted to show battle footage. Humans attacking Zathrian positions with primitive weapons. Cities exploding as defenders transformed infrastructure into weapons. Forests becoming deadly mazes where Zathrian patrols vanished without trace. The humans introduced us to a concept they call asymmetric warfare, Krelvis continued. It is not a new concept in galactic military theory, but humans have refined it to an art form through 10,000 years of near-constant warfare against themselves. The principle is simple. When facing a superior enemy, refuse to fight on their terms. Create new rules. Make victory so costly that defeat becomes the more attractive option. A representative from the Quellen Collective, a species of aquatic beings, rippled their communication tentacles. Surely your military doctrine accounted for guerrilla tactics? Such strategies are well documented throughout galactic history. We accounted for guerrilla resistance, Krelvis acknowledged. What we didn't account for was an entire planetary population transforming into guerrilla fighters simultaneously. Humans didn't form resistance cells within a conquered population. They evacuated their cities before we arrived and turned those cities into death traps. They didn't sabotage our supply lines occasionally. They attacked every supply convoy, every patrol, every isolated unit. They didn't preserve their infrastructure for eventual recapture. They destroyed it themselves to deny us its use. The hologram showed statistics, casualty rates, resource expenditure, projected timelines for conquest that stretched from weeks to decades. In 2 months of occupation, we lost 94,000 warriors. We destroyed 17 major cities, but gained no strategic advantage because the humans simply fought from the ruins. We controlled the skies and seas, but couldn't control the land because the humans refused to hold territory. They were everywhere and nowhere. An army without fixed positions. A resistance without centralized command. A species that treated death as an acceptable cost of freedom. A representative from the Kreeth Empire, a militant species known for their conquest campaigns, spoke next. You had orbital superiority. Why not simply sterilize the planet and establish new colonies? Because that's not conquest, Krelvis replied. That's genocide. The purpose of the campaign was to acquire productive colonies and resources. Destroying the planet defeats that purpose. The humans understood this limitation and exploited it. They knew we wanted them alive, so they made keeping them alive more expensive than killing them would have been. He pulled up more footage. Humans broadcasting their resistance efforts across all frequencies, showing captured Zathrian warriors being treated with respect before being released, demonstrating improvised weapons and tactics. The humans also understood psychological warfare better than any species I've encountered. They didn't just fight us. They documented their fighting and broadcast it. They wanted the galaxy to see that the Zathrian Empire could be defeated. They wanted other conquered species to understand that resistance was possible. The chamber erupted in multiple languages and communication methods as representatives realized the implications. If humans could defeat the Zathrians, other species might attempt similar resistance. Krelvis raised his hand for silence. The Earth campaign ended with a negotiated withdrawal. We left their system intact. In exchange, they agreed not to pursue our forces. But that agreement had a time limit. 5 years. As of 3 months ago, that limitation expired. He pulled up new imagery. Human ships. Not primitive chemical rockets, but actual spacecraft with fusion drives and basic shield technology. Crude by galactic standards, but functional. And there were hundreds of them. The humans used the 5 years to industrialize their asteroid belt and outer planets. They reverse-engineered technology from captured Zathrian equipment. They built weapons, ships, and defensive platforms. They didn't just survive our invasion. They used it as a catalyst to accelerate their technological development by decades. A crystalline representative from the Zaltesh Concordat chimed to question. Are the humans a threat to galactic peace? That depends entirely on how we approach them, Kralvis said carefully. Humans are not inherently aggressive. Their history shows they're capable of both incredible brutality and remarkable compassion. They fight viciously when threatened, but also form lasting alliances with former enemies. They nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons, but also cooperated to prevent that destruction. They're contradictory, unpredictable, and absolutely determined to survive. He changed the display to show diplomatic communications from Earth. Humans have formally requested recognition as an independent sovereign species and a seat on this council. They've offered trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and defensive alliances. They're trying to join the galactic community peacefully. I strongly recommend we accept their offer. Why? Demanded the Kreeth representative. They're still technologically inferior. Why should we grant them equal status? Because the alternative is teaching them that the galaxy only respects force, Kralvis said bluntly. Humans learn quickly. Very quickly. If we reject their peaceful overtures, they'll assume they need to establish themselves through military means. And I promise you, honored representatives, you don't want humans to feel threatened again. The tactics they used against us were restrained compared to what their history shows they're capable of. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. Tactics so brutal, they banned them among themselves. If we force them to fight, they'll use everything they have. And they have more than we initially thought. He pulled up intelligence reports. Human deep space probes had been detected across multiple systems. Human listening posts in asteroid fields. Human research stations studying alien technology. In 5 years, they'd gone from a single planet species to one establishing a presence across their entire star system and beginning to reach beyond it. Humans also have something most species lack, Kralvis continued. They're driven by curiosity and ambition in equal measure. They don't just want to survive. They want to explore, learn, grow, and compete. They'll become spacefaring regardless of what we do. The question is whether they emerge as friends or enemies. I've fought humans. I've lost warriors to human ingenuity. I've watched an entire empire's military doctrine proven inadequate against their tactics. And I'm telling you, I'd rather have them as allies. The quelling representative rippled again. What do they want from us? The same things we all want, Kralvis replied. Recognition, security, opportunity. They want to trade their resources and knowledge for access to galactic technology and markets. They want to learn from species that have been spacefaring for millennia. They want to contribute to galactic civilization rather than being conquered by it. And in exchange? The crystalline Zaltesh asked. In exchange, they offer their unique perspective and capabilities. Humans are innovative problem solvers. They approach challenges differently in most species because their evolutionary path was different. They're endurance predators on their homeworld, capable of sustained effort over long periods. They're social creatures who form complex alliances. They're creative thinkers who excel at improvisation. And yes, they're dangerous when threatened. But